In Terlingua, the dead outnumber the living, and at night, the dead remember. I didn't believe in ghosts before I drove down to Terlingua. Not truly. Not in the way people whisper about them here, like they're just neighbors who never left. I had been on the road for days, exploring old mining towns for my photography project on Abandoned America. Terlingua was supposed to be just another stop. Some desert ruins, a crumbling church, rows of leaning wooden crosses, and a cemetery that looked like it would collapse into the dry earth at any second. I arrived late in the afternoon. The sun was sinking behind the jagged mountains, throwing long shadows across the bleached ruins. The heat clung to everything like an invisible second skin. My boots crunched on gravel as I stepped out of the truck, camera slung around my neck. It felt silent, too silent. Not the peaceful quiet of the desert, but a thick, watchful hush. I shook it off. Desert ghost towns were always eerie. That was their charm. I set up my tripod near the cemetery first. Rows of graves stretched out before me, marked by handmade crosses, rusty iron markers, and mounds of piled rocks. Plastic flowers, bleached bone white by the sun, trembled in the windless air. Little trinkets lay at some graves: toy cars, marbles, cigarette lighters, a lone worn-out doll with no eyes. I zoomed in on one grave with a cross fashioned from two twisted pieces of metal. As I focused, the horizon behind it wavered, heat rippling off the rocks. For a split second, I thought I saw movement in the cemetery, like someone ducking behind a grave. I lowered the camera. Nothing. The shadows shifted again. I walked through the graves, reading faded names: Maria Gonzalez, 1912, Jose Martinez, 1917, unknown child, 1914. So many deaths clustered in so few years. Cholera, mining accidents, collapsed shafts, buried alive, entire families wiped out by the flu. I felt the sorrow clinging to this place like a weight pressing down on my chest. As dusk settled, a violet haze fell across the desert. I packed my camera and walked towards the ruins of the old general store. Its adobe walls were cracked, windows gaping open like eyeless sockets. I pushed the creaking door open. Dust floated in golden shafts of fading light. Shelves still lined the walls, sagging under the weight of time. There were rusted tin cans, shattered bottles, a broken cash register half buried in dirt. The air smelled of scorched wood and old rot. I heard it then, a faint shuffle from deeper inside. "Hello!" I called out. No answer. I stepped cautiously between fallen beams and broken shelves. At the back was a narrow hallway, leading to a small storeroom. The door was half open, scraping slightly against the floor in the breeze. But there was no breeze. I pushed it open. The room was empty except for an overturned chair and an old oil lantern lying on its side. But the air was colder in there, sharply colder. I could see my breath bloom in ghostly puffs. That's when I felt it, a presence behind me, heavy, watching. My scalp prickled as if tiny needles pushed into my skin. I turned quickly, nothing but the dim hallway. But I heard a sigh, soft and weary, right next to my ear. I bolted out of the store, stumbling over rubble, heart slamming against my ribs. Outside, night had fallen completely. The desert sky was a velvet dome scattered with fierce stars. The ruins glowed pale under the moonlight, shadows pooling like spilled ink. I decided to sleep in my truck that night. The idea of pitching a tent among those ruins felt disrespectful somehow, like sleeping inside a graveyard. I lay on the truck's back seat, staring up through the window at the stars. The desert was silent except for the sighing wind and distant yips of coyotes. Slowly, exhaustion pulled me down into uneasy sleep. I woke up to whispers. At first, I thought it was the wind brushing against the glass, but the voices were too clear. Soft, echoing murmurs, speaking Spanish and English, overlapping like an invisible crowd. I sat up, heart pounding, listening. I could hear a woman sobbing, a child calling Mama, Mama, over and over, a man's voice muttering prayers rapidly as if to ward off something he couldn't see. I rubbed my eyes and peered out into the darkness. That's when I saw them, figures moving among the ruins. Some drifted between the old mine shafts, their forms glowing faintly silver in the moonlight. Others walked along the path to the cemetery, heads bowed as if in mourning. There was a woman in a long white dress stained with dirt. Her hair hung in tangled black strands over her face. She walked with bare feet, her hands clasped in front of her chest as if in prayer. She turned suddenly and looked straight at me. Even from that distance, I could see her eyes, empty, hollow sockets of darkness. I ducked down below the window, choking back a cry. My skin prickled with an electric cold. I could still hear her footsteps crunching on gravel outside. Closer, closer, then silence. Minutes passed. I forced myself to peek outside. She was gone, but on the window's dusty glass was a print. A handprint, small and delicate, smeared across the dirt. I stayed awake the rest of the night, clutching my camera to my chest like it could protect me. At dawn, I stepped outside. The desert glowed gold under the rising sun. The ruins looked peaceful again, as if nothing had happened. I checked my camera, hoping to find proof of what I saw. Most shots were normal. Desert, ruins, crosses, shadows. But as I flipped through, my thumb froze. There, in the photo of the cemetery at dusk, stood the woman in white. She was standing right behind the grave with a twisted metal cross, staring directly into the camera lens with her hollow black eyes. In another photo, taken in the general store, a shadow loomed in the corner of the room. Its shape was wrong, too tall, too thin, with long arms that nearly touched the ground. The last photo was one I didn't remember taking. It showed the truck from outside, in the moonlight, and through the back window, I could see myself sleeping. Standing next to the truck was the woman in white, her hand pressed to the glass, her face turned towards me. My stomach turned cold and heavy. My pulse thudded in my ears. I packed everything and left that place without looking back. But even now, weeks later, I still wake up at night with the taste of desert dust in my mouth. I still hear the whispers of the dead, and sometimes, when I check my camera late at night, I see new photos. Photos I never took. Photos of me sleeping, with her standing at my bedside. They say the spirits of Terlingua never leave, and if you see them, they follow you home.